Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from the FIDE World Rapid Championship. By now I'm sure you've already heard the news. Magnus Carlsen won his 16th title altogether and his 5th World Rapid Championship title. It was a pretty clean event. I can't imagine it going any cleaner, like maybe that one game that he could have pushed against Vincent Keimer, but other than that it was a pretty sensational event. And to give you an idea of how this looked throughout the entire tournament, throughout all of the 13 rounds. First day was pretty straightforward. After that draw against Nikita Petrov, he got 4 wins in a row against Denis Hismatulin, Tigran Petrosyan, Parham Maksudlu, and Timur Garev. Then on day 2, he started by beating Vidit Gujarati. We've seen that game on the channel, followed by 3 draws against Arjun Ergaisi, Yuan Gi, and Vincent Keimer. And then on day 4, he defeated Vladimir Fedosev. And I think the win against Fedosev was pretty much foreshadowing the 16th title in Magnus's pocket. Then we are going to show his game against Iranian Grandmaster Pouya Idani here in this video. We've actually featured him on the channel some 2 months ago. He had that crazy game against Jan Krzysztof Duda in the Grand Swiss. If you haven't seen it, I will put a link to it. First link in the description below. Really a wonderful game to check out. And then you thought that maybe Nodirbek or Pragnananda would be able to do something, as they are also fighting for a prize. You know, Nodirbek being the local hero, as the tournament is played in Uzbekistan, and well, Pragnananda just being, you know, the next chosen one. But Magnus shut down their play very early on, and they couldn't. If they wanted to get anything more than a draw, they would simply have to risk too much. So Magnus really played it very smart, and since Fedosev really drew his game very, very quickly, Magnus didn't really have to play against Pragnananda for more than a draw. So that's what happened, and I'm going to show you his game against Pouya Idani, who's had an incredible tournament, but you know, at some point you do have to play Magnus. So let's check it out. Magnus had the white pieces, and he opened with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5, the Sicilian defense, knight f3, pawn to d6, and now bishop to c4. We have knight to f6, d3, and now pawn to g6. So a very rare continuation of the Sicilian defense, d6, c5, and g6, all in this order. Castles, we have bishop to g7, and now a couple of games with c3 do exist, but here pawn to a4, and it is now already as of move 6 that we have a completely new game. So okay, we have castles by Pouya, c3, and now knight to c6. Continuing development, we have h3, and now the immediate strike in the center with pawn to d5. E captures, we have knight captures, and rook to e1. We have pawn to b6, and now knight to b to d2, bringing the knight over to b3, pawn to e6, and the knight to b3. We have bishop to b7. Pouya puts the bishop on this long diagonal, which is of course very strong. Bishop to g5, attacking the queen, and queen to c7. We have pawn to d4 by Magnus, knight c to e7, and now queen to e2. We have pawn to h6, chasing away the bishop, bishop to d2, and now knight to f4, attacking the queen. And here Magnus has to be very careful. If he moves the queen to somewhere like f1 to control the knight, then all of a sudden knight captures on h3 happens, as the g2 pawn is the only one defending the knight on f3. So Magnus captures here, bishop captures on f4, we have queen captures, and now knight to e5. And now Pouya does have the bishop pair, but there is a monster knight on e5. We have knight to f5, and now queen to g4. Magnus quickly offers a trade of queens, which you maybe don't have to accept right away, but I mean, you could trade on e5 and then trade, but you do have to trade. So queen captures, h captures, and now knight back to d6, and here just bishop back to f1. Guarding everything here. And yes, Magnus does have a double g pawn, but it's not really an issue. We have c captures on d4, and now knight captures on d4. We have bishop to d5, putting the bishop to a nice central square. Now the bishop pretty much controls the entire board, and pawn to a5. Magnus finds activity on the queen side by sacrificing a pawn, but first Pouya captures on e5. We have rook captures and b captures on a5. We have rook captures on e5, sorry, rook captures on a5, rook 8 to b8, trying to grab the b2 pawn, and here already incredible complications arise. Look at this, pawn to b4 by Magnus. Of course, now he defends his pawn and still attacks the a7 pawn. Rook f to c8. Now Pouya attacks Magnus's c3 pawn. So Magnus defends it, rook to e3, and now knight to e4, putting more pressure on the c3 pawn. So what can Magnus play? Well, he goes knight to b5, attacks the a7 pawn, and defends the c3 pawn twice. And what do you do here? Well, it's not easy to find a move here. Like you play something like rook to b7, you want to add a defender to the a7 pawn. It doesn't really work because the only piece stopping knight to d6 with a fork is the knight on e4, and then f3 just kicks away the knight, and knight d6 forks the two rooks. So it's very hard to find a move here, but Pouya does find it. Knight to d2. Knight captures on a7, and now knight captures on f1. He sacrifices a pawn for activity. King captures on f1, and now rook to c7. Puts pressure on the knight, and Magnus just goes king to g1. And if you have to be super careful here. If you play something like pawn to f3, look at the light squares here. This is terrible. The rook just attacks the knight, and once the knight moves, bishop to c4 check will pick up that knight. So that's why Magnus quickly shifts his king to a dark square, king to e1, and now bishop to c4, again trying to trap the knight, and now king to g1 was played, not king to e1, and now, so the g2 pawn is defended, and now bishop to c4 and rook e to e5, not allowing the any tricky business here. And now the idea is that if, of course, you go after the knight here, you can simply play rook e to c5 and challenge the rook and also the bishop. So that's the point. Now, if you capture here, then rook captures on a7, and you have problems. Like you could capture here, rook captures, you're up the exchange, and if you capture here, then rook captures. Yes, it's a rook endgame, but Magnus has the two connected pass pawns on the queen side. So instead, after rook e to e5, bishop to d5 was played, disconnecting the rooks, and now Magnus finds knight back to b5, again defending his c3 pawn. So it doesn't seem like it's that easy to win back material. We have rook to c4, and now pawn to f3. We have bishop back to c6, and now knight to d6, attacking the rook here. Rook captures on c3, finally winning back the pawn, and now rook e to c5. Magnus offers a trade of rooks, and he figures out a way on how to keep the pawn on b4 alive. Rook captures on c5, rook captures attacking the bishop, and bishop to d5. Now you cannot control the b5 square as it's covered by the knight and the rook. And if you go something like bishop to a4, then already rook to c7 is a problem. And now you don't care about the b pawn, as the f7 pawn will be an issue. So instead, after rook captures on c5, bishop back to d5 is played, and now just pawn to b5. This is how Magnus keeps the b pawn alive. Rook to b6 going after the knight, and now Magnus plays knight to c8. And rook to b6 was a bit of a over-optimistic sort of idea. King to f8 was the move that you should have played. But now, although not a mistake in itself, it does allow Magnus to play for the win, and he plays knight to c8. The real threat is knight to e7 check. Now, whether the rook endgame is winning or not, it's hard to say, but Pouya makes it winning by allowing this. You have to play rook b7 and prevent knight to e7 check. He played rook to b8, and now Magnus is winning. He plays knight to e7 check, king to f8, and knight captures on d5. E captures, and now what do you think Magnus played here? What did Pouya Idani miss that allowed Magnus to trade off and go into a rook and pawn endgame? Feel free to pause the video and try and find the only move that wins here for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not being a pawn grabber. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is king to f2. That's the move that wins, and that is the move that Magnus played. Point is that if you capture the rook, then you allow black some very quick moves, and the rook will allow the king to move one step further with tempo. King f2, king to e6. Now you have to react to this. Rook to c5. Now king to d6. And after rook to c6 check, you will play king to d5, and there's just no good way of dealing with things here. The pawn is hanging. If you go after the kingside pawns, then just rook captures, and rook to b6. Yes, it's 3 pawns against 2, but they're on the same side of the board, and this is a simple draw. But after king to f2, no such tempi are available. Here, king f2, rook to a8 was now played, trying to go after that poor g2 pawn, but Magnus doesn't care about that pawn anymore. King e3, rook to a2, and now king to d4. Rook captures on g2, and now king captures on d5. It is important to get the king close enough to support the passed pawn. Pawn to h5, and Magnus even starts pushing. Pawn to b6. We have rook to b2. Now comes king to c6. We have a capture here, or you push. If you push the pawn, doesn't really matter. Just b7, h3, and now rook blocks rook, and the next move you queen with check. So the passed h pawn doesn't really do all that much. So after king to c6, h captures on g4 was played, f captures, and now king to e7. But here comes pawn to b7, and of course next comes rook to b5. There's no stopping this. So rook captures on b7 was played, king captures, and now king to e6, hoping to get f5 in, and then the king and pawn might be able to do something. Maybe if you push the pawn far enough, you can trade it for Magnus's rook, but Magnus just played pawn to g5, took away the f5 and f6 squares from the black king, and he was in this position on move 51 that Pouya Idani resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The only thing you can try is f6, but that will be met with simple rook c6 check. And then if king goes back, let's say you can capture with the rook, or if king goes forward, you will play g captures on f5. You have a defended passed pawn, and now you're easily winning and very much straightforward. So yeah, very nicely done by Magnus. He wins his 16th title in a row, combining all of the World Chess Championship titles, and like I said, the 5th World Rapid Championship title. But not only that, he defends his title from last year, as he also won last year, so that's pretty impressive. Now, I don't know if the other games have finished, and the websites are really lagging, the one that we are using. I mean, pretty much all of them. Yeah, some of the games are still being played, but I think for the top 3, we can be fairly sure. Like, it's Magnus in sole lead with 10 points, Vladimir Fedosev with 9.5 points, and what an incredible run. If you have a chance, do check it out. On the final day, he lost to Magnus Carlsen. That was the game that I covered that really propelled Magnus into the lead. But then his win against Nihal Sarin, I think, was like 150 moves from a completely dead drawn position. He was able to squeeze, like he really pulled the Magnus in that one, really squeezed water out of stone. And then against Vidit Gujarati, Vladimir Fedosev was lost pretty much from the beginning, and then in the end he won that game. Again, absolutely incredible. But then in the final round against Dmitry Andreikin, he actually went for a quick draw. And then after Magnus saw that, he also drew his game. Yu Yangyi, okay, a lot of people with 9 points, so I don't know the exact order, but it's, with 9 points, Yu Yangyi, Vidit Gujarati, Volodar Murzin, incredible performance by 17-year-old Volodar Murzin. I mean, he defeated some incredible players. Look at this, a draw against Nodrbek, win against Levon, draw against Grishuk, draw against Kaimer, draw against Rajabov, draw against Dubov. He defeated Yanni Pomnic, he defeated Pragnananda, a couple of draws with Laurent Fresnay, Jordan Van Vres, Vidit Gujarati. I mean, yeah, that is an outstanding tournament, and without a single loss. So that is incredible performance by 17-year-old Volodar Murzin. Maxim Vashelograb also on 9 points. Danil Dubov also on 9 without a single loss. Yeah, he's always he's always up there. I think last year he got 4th place. So we'll see what happens here. Again, Prague with 9, Dmitry Andreikin with 9, Fabiano Caruana also not having a Fabi tournament, but he pulled through. In the end, Peter Svidler also 9 points, Nodrbek 9 points, Parham 9 points, and like I said, some of the games are still in play, so I don't know the exact one, but I will show at least one more game from the tournament, and then we are going to discuss the complete standings and everything. And I've heard there was even get this, there was even an Evans Gambit game played against Rajabov, so chances are I will be showing that one, if you guys don't mind. But yeah, that's the game, and a little bit of extra info about the tournament. Once again, big congratulations to Magnus Carlsen on his performance and just straight out dominance. We'll see if he will be able to hold off everyone in the Blitz section, as well as he's defending the World Blitz Championship title as well. Which I believe will be much harder to defend than the Rapid, but again, who knows? He is Magnus. So yeah, once again, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Isaac Davis, Martin Georg Paparik, Carlos Rudi, Robert Farnsworth, and Timothy Rosen for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but mostly following up on what's happening in the World Rapid and Blitz Championship. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.